So welcome to season 2. This is episode 3 of season 2. We started a Patreon, so patreon.com/illrepute. And if you want to support us, you can. We only have one tier right now. It's called the Temptress tier. We put our scripts up so you can read through those and see the sources and all the things and look at all the pictures that we gather, etc. You get the uncensored video version of the podcast, and you also get a bonus episode every month. You're actually going to come here next week so that we can film some of that bonus content. So our first bonus episode should probably be coming out in February is when we will be starting that. So those are all fun things you can get. Or if you just want to support. Yeah. But and if you can't afford it, that is totally fine.
It's still free.
It's still free. But if you want to, we've made some goodies for y'all. And so that's really fun.
And there will be the opportunity to connect your Patreon pledged account to Discord. It'll be a fun little place to come and chat and shoot the shit and have existential crises, panic, meltdown, hug each other and pray for salvation or literally any relief from the hellscape that we're living. Oh wait, it's 2024 now. I need to get over it. I'm good.
Oh
now.
no,
just kidding.
We're rolling into an election year, so yeehaw!
Oof,
ennui.
Bitch, you almost made me spit my drink on my microphone.
Other exciting things I got to open for Mark Maron. By the time you guys are hearing this, it'll have been probably a month ago. But I got to open for him, and I fucking crushed it.
You were so good.
I'm fully back in stand-up now, and really driven and focused on it. And I have a Substack where I'm posting clips and poems and my micro essays, etc. But all that will be linked at the show notes, and all of Ella's links for all of her special places to support her gentleman special interest content.
That is my favorite way of describing it. Yes, I appeared in some gentleman special interest films.
Yes.
Yes. You belong in marketing.
Greetings and welcome to Ill Repute, the podcast about women and women first. My name is Sovereign Syre. I am a writer, I'm a comedian, and I am your crazy ex-girlfriend.
We should be so lucky. Crazy pussy is the best pussy.
We
really
all know
is.
this. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Ela Darling, VR pioneer, former librarian, sex worker, and history's greatest monster.
I love it.
Now, we here at Ill Repute support women's rights.
But more importantly, we support women's wrongs.
And which woman's wrongs are we righting today, Savi?
Phyllis motherfucking Diller.
Yes.
Time for... She got her flowers in life, but then she kind of got forgotten. And it's a shame. Because as I was researching her, god damn, she was cool.
And that's really disappointing. Because goats love flowers.
So when we last left off, Phyllis Diller had just made her professional debut as a stand-up comedian. She was 37 years old, and they liked her so much that when the other comic returned, they kept them both. So here is Phyllis describing the purple onion in her memoir.
And remind me, what was the name of the female comic that they created the purple onion for? Jory
Remus.
Jory Remus.
Yeah.
I just think that's such a cool story.
Yes. Very, very cool.
So Phyllis said, housing 170 seats that were basically director's chairs, the Purple Onion was an intimate joint. To the left, after you walked down a steep flight of 16 steps from the street, was the bar. A very active gay bar. And up about 4 steps on that side was a booth with wooden bench seats.
And stand-up is still very much this way, especially in New York. Everything's in a basement. Everything is just a brick wall. No windows. Crowded as fuck. Yeah. And I love it.
It's a vibe.
Love it. Everyone's drunk. they're usually, you know, the clubs are usually in kind of the artsy gay areas. There's a grit and a dirt to it that is really fun. Yeah. Like I think there's certain elements of being a comedian that just I fucking love. I love the smell of like stale beer in the carpet in a basement club, like it, because I just know that I'm doing show business. I'm show folk. Like there's something about it that's very comforting. So she continues on. She says, then on the right, there was a dressing room the size of a postage stamp. They are still that small. If you get one, if you get a green room. Usually the green room is like a weird closet that you're sharing with a water heater and like black widows. Imagine the Kingston Trio folk group having to change alongside me, a 37-year-old Alameda housewife in a bustier before bustiers were in. It was so damp in there that the mice would scamper around the mold. One night, I even caught a baby mouse and took it home to replace our pet canary, which had just died. I was so resourceful.
That is resourceful as f- I love a woman who works within what she's got, you know?
Yeah. I mean, she's been making from Shinola for like 17 years at this point. She's really learned her craft.
With Phyllis performing at the Purple Onion, she started to hone her act, like you're saying. She cut ties with Lloyd, the manager, I think, that she was in touch with.
Yes. So had been Jory Remus's coach, and then she hired him on, and the deal was that like she would pay him back when she made it. And what they immediately got into was like a lot of conflicts around the material because he was very much like a theatrical kind of writer, and she wanted to do like stuff about her life. And he thought that was like too mundane. And she kind of took a risk and was like, I'm going to let you go. I think that I think what I'm doing has something to it.
Yeah, she knew that what she was doing resonated with her particular audience and that it was something that audiences could relate to and weren't getting necessarily at that point. Maybe, except for maybe Jory, because their comedy was similar in terms of sort of like their audience and their presentation, but she was very much a new emerging style.
None of the women that were doing stand-up were housewives. They were fucking road veterans. You know what I mean? Like they were fucking show folk. They were coming out of the burlesque circuit, the cabaret circuit. They were actresses that occasionally did stand-up, right? Like she was the first actual housewife doing stand-up. So she was bringing a point of view that just no one had before, because all the people that were doing stand-up were performers. I mean, that's the only life they knew, was being a performer. So a lot of their stand-up and different things were very like either observational or self-referential, you know, and that happens with comedy even now. Is comedians will be talking about comedy. Like every time Dave Chappelle's like commenting on trans issues and the backlash, it's like, I'm so fucking bored. Like who relates to that? Like being famous and a millionaire? Like nobody, you know what I mean? Like that's such a particular and peculiar experience. It's like, I don't give a shit that you've got haters online. Like you're living in a mansion. Like, why do I care? Like when a comedian comes in that genuinely just comes from a different place, there's something really exciting that happens there because they actually have a point of view.
Yeah.
Anyway, I digress. Here is a clip that is her talking about taking bad advice.
Your laugh is becoming your trademark.
That's true. That's just my natural, normal laugh.
Well, I heard in the beginning when you started laughing that some friends of yours said, look, Phyllis, give up that stupid laugh.
Yes. Well, you get a lot of really bum advice when you're down. See, when you are small and beginning and you haven't made it, everybody's smarter than you are and they all want to tell you what to do and where to go, how to do it, and they're all wrong. All wrong. If they knew what to do, they'd be doing it.
So really quickly, she had developed a character, Fang, that was like her hapless husband. And so in all of her material, she had like several stock characters that she sort of created. They weren't necessarily based on her actual in-laws or her actual husband, but that was like she created a husband and she called him Fang. And the whole trope was that he was just so stupid and so hapless. And as much as she's like, it was a character, it's like, it's so clearly kind of based on her real life husband, Sherwood.
Sherwood.
Yeah. Sherwood. And so the thing is like, so this character though, like became beloved because it kind of turned on its end the concept at the time in the 50s of the husband as like the king of the castle. And then she developed, her persona was that she was like this acerbic, aggressive antithesis to the 50s housewife. I can't cook. I'm so ugly. No one wants to fuck me. Like that was kind of her shtick, right?
Yeah.
And it was just, oh, and my husband's so fucking dumb, and my mother-in-law is really fat, and then my sister-in-law is like a beanpole and a slut. You know, like she just kind of created these archetypes, you know, and then she would make fun of herself. Like, I'm so fucking skinny. I'm so flat-chested. She described it later as like kind of the only form of therapy she had to kind of vent about the frustration of her life at home with this like husband that was basically like weaponized incompetence in a living form.
Yeah. Exactly what you expect from that dude.
Yes.
Completely.
Yeah. So Josh, here's going to be another TikTok clip, and it's going to be her talking about how she came up with the character.
Well, the men comics really didn't make fun of themselves ever. They always made fun of their wife. So you see, I snuck in there and got in that niche there and turned the tables. I built a fang to be the receptacle of all those. You talk about an idiot. Now here's Fang. Got back at him.
She mentioned that she created Fang kind of because a lot of the male stand-ups, first of all, didn't do self-deprecation. They just shit all over their wives who were probably looking after their children while they were making not very much money at the stand-up club.
Yeah.
But I really love that. I love turning the tables in a sort of gender dynamic way.
Yeah.
That way. That's, I mean, when we write this show, when I wrote about Hedy Lamarr, I'm like, her ex-boyfriend, what's his name? That dude? Yeah. This footnote in her incredible story, because that's what women end up being. And I love anything that sort of like just puts a little spin there. And what a queen.
It was like a very quiet subversion, right? Because it's like, it's a nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Like if you're a housewife and you hate your fucking husband and you see this material, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But if you don't, if you're not a housewife, if you're not a woman and you don't know what this is like, it's just funny. Like, oh, isn't this funny? And that is fucking really good comedy. That is good comedy. It's like when you can be talking to two different people at the same fucking time, like that is next level shit right there.
Phyllis was a hit, obviously, Natch. She worked really hard at her craft. She was constantly working on and tweaking her act until she had it down to a science. And we're going to jump to a quick TikTok right here. Mr. Joshua.
Having a stance, creating for yourself a stance. When you come out, you're just another person, ordinary clothes maybe. You know, that's what they do now. They come out in ordinary clothes, ordinary hairdo, walk out. That's okay, but you got to have an attitude. See, all right, Joan Rivers has an attitude. It's a Jewish attitude. You got to get the big ring. You got to get the money. You got it? At least she's got an attitude. She's Jewish. She's chic. She's smart. That's her attitude. And it works. But you see, some comics come out with no attitude. Tim Allen had an attitude. Those noises. All those dumb attitudes. You know, he had his attitude. The stronger your stance, your attitude. I'll give you another example of a comic of whom I'm crazy in love with, Richard Lewis. Remember? The Prince of Pain.
If anybody is curious, Josh is our intrepid producer who hikes miles uphill through the snow both ways to make Sovereign and I sound like we're not inane.
Yes.
And it's quite, you can imagine the cross that is for him to bear.
He keeps you from sounding inane, and he keeps me from getting canceled. He is very liberal with the cuts.
Sorry, it takes a village sometimes, okay? Phyllis started with music and props, and by the end, it was just her talking the whole time. She started touring with her husband and her kids, with some of the kids being sent to relatives and others sleeping with them in the car or small hotel rooms on the road.
Which is like, it's nightmare fuel. Like the road is, because yes, sometimes you're in New York or Los Angeles or San Francisco, but a lot of times you're in little suburbs outside of bigger cities. And I've never stayed in a condo, but some comedy clubs have like a comedian's condo where they just house everybody. But I've been in plenty of Motel 6s and well, motels, not hotels. And you could be driving 6 to 8 hours between cities, for like $400 or $500. So it's not worth it to get a flight. So you drive, and you know what I mean? It's like these ways, this kind of like comedian math. Like,
Absolutely.
okay, the gig pays this much, but they don't cover travel. So I can either take a plane and make $200, or I can drive 8 hours each way, and I can make $500, and then they're gonna pay for my motel room there. Like, so it's like lonely. Stand up is kind of a lonely job because you're on stage by yourself. Mm-hmm. You get really high from performing, and then you go home by yourself. And then you get in your car and you drive to the next fucking dive. And you just do that until you're famous. That's the formula. I'm trying to imagine doing that with a husband and kids. Like,
especially that husband.
Fucking A. Especially
like that particular husband.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rough.
Yeah.
Also, I had no idea that comedy clubs would have like a condo for talent. That I cannot help myself. I view the world through the lens of a hoe. And so when I hear that, I'm like, oh shit, it's like the model houses that like
it's
the
exactly
agents
like
would
that.
put girls in. And
here, sleep in this bed that some middle-aged comic was just jerking off in the night before when he was the feature. Mm-hmm. Have fun.
I hope that you have some dreams when you're sleeping, because this is where all of them go to die.
Yes, exactly. So she was getting great write-ups everywhere, and her star was on the rise, even if she wasn't making much money. She did go through growing pains in Los Angeles and New York, where she learned how to market and sell herself on stage. She dyed her hair blonde. She started wearing sequins. She bought a cigarette holder so that she'd always have her right hand up, getting the audience's attention, and it worked. Because she was a worker.
Oh, little by little, I'm realizing what it means to be theatrical. You light. I just stripped the hair and made it blonde. That way, you reflect light. They don't want to come and look at a girl with brown hair, please, especially an ugly girl. And this is my old face, which helped because in the old medieval days, the court jester was always ugly. He had a big nose, sometimes a humpback, sometimes he was a dwarf, wore little boots with the little bells, and all clowns wear gloves. So little by little, I was getting to my persona. But that's where I got the cigarette. Then I learned to use it to show hostility. There were people, it was wooden, it was a prop. There were people who thought it was 9 miles long. It wasn't. It was just an ordinary cigarette holder about that long, about 5 inches long, with the cigarette. And there were people who swore they saw smoke coming out of it. There were people who swore they saw ashes falling from it. Now, this is acting. I'm proud of this. Mm-hmm. I also use it for chopsticks. I use it to make a point. It gave me an excuse to hold up my right hand. You're not going to hold it down here. All right. If you want to flag a train, if you want to get someone's attention, if you want to speak in class, it's a way of getting attention. In other words, it's subliminal, but it works.
Now, I'm going to tell you the truth about what I'm wearing. I used to work as a lampshade in Las Vegas. Now, you may think my legs are funny. But there is one man in this world who's absolutely crazy about my legs. Colonel Sanders.
So it was not until I watched these clips of Phyllis Diller wearing the outfit, I definitely didn't just murder my husband officer outfit, the robe with the marabou like feathery accents.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It wasn't until I saw that and heard you kind of describe her shtick that she's going for that I realized that my grandmother, who was one of my best friends, she's such a fucking spicy broad. I loved her.
Oh, I love it.
She came to my wedding wearing a slinky black dress, a tiara, a red feather boa, a cigarette holder, and just looking like $10,000 in a $5 wallet. Like, she looked amazing. And I didn't realize until her hair was also short and very beautiful blonde. And I think I didn't realize until now she was totally channeling Phyllis Diller. That is how
I
she
bet,
came to my
yeah.
wedding. It was a Halloween wedding. It was absolutely appropriate. She would never dare to show up to a formal event if not appropriate. But I love this because Phyllis, I already knew I was going to love her so much, but it just like gave me this like connection and insight to this badass bitch that I
She was a
came from.
baddie. She was
She's
a
so
baddie.
cool.
Yeah, she's very cool.
Well, Phyllis even got her first television appearance as a guest on You Bet Your Life, hosted by Groucho Marx, which I didn't know was a show until today.
Oh. I mean, I was familiar with Groucho Marx, but like until I saw this clip, I didn't look, and I was like, oh, he's kind of sexy. So Phyllis thought her performance sucked because she had edited the material for the family audience, and she felt that Groucho was stony with her. But when you watch the footage, he actually seems genuinely impressed with her, and dare I say, enamored. Like there is like a sexual tension there. Like the way he's looking at her is with such engagement.
Let's take a listen.
Well, the thing is, I did hope to make money, and I still have to take the thrift flight, things like that, and I hate the thrift flight. I mean, like, well, none of the costly extras, like landing gear. And, and the minute you're in one of these wicker seats, I'm nervous, you know, and by then it's too late, you got the marks, and... But the stewardess is 86 usually because, well, she said she was one of the Wright sisters. She built the plane. And I said to her, I said, honey, sweetie, I had been shopping at the May Company, and it rubs off. I said, would you please tell me how long it will be before we get to Los Angeles? And she said, I don't know. We've never made it.
That was very good, Phyllis, and I'm sure you're going to be a big success in show business.
Yeah.
It's a weird, affliction to be a comedian person. It's an affliction because it's like, it's a really crazy, if you think about it, it's such a crazy job. It's so confrontational, especially as a woman. It's so confrontational. Like I have the loud stick. I'm in charge. Like it's so antithetical to like everything you're taught. And then you're doing the job that's everyone's number one fear, which is public speaking. So it's such a crazy thing to have the emotional makeup to enjoy this job. And a lot of people don't. That's why they drink and drug, because they don't. Because they extreme highs, but extreme lows. There's a reason they call it dying. When you bomb, you feel like you're dying because the social humiliation is so incredible.
If it can lift you up incredibly high, it can toss you down and kick you incredibly low. It can stomp you down to greater depths of misery. Phyllis was in New York and befriended the booker for the Jack Parr show. She had submitted to the Jack Parr show before, and they had said that her material just wasn't right. Not a good fit. Her friend pestered the show for weeks on end until they caved and finally booked Phyllis. That night, she says she gave the performance of a lifetime. Her act was a hit, the audience fell in love with her, and it put her on the map.
I mean, this is huge. This would be like getting the Tonight Show and then nailing it. You know, I mean, just like, that's a night and day thing. The reason that people want to get on late night is so they can headline when they go tour. Like, that's the whole kind of point. So after her performance on Jack Parr, she could fill a room anywhere in the country at any time. And that was kind of the power of television. We talked about this briefly in the previous episode. But part of what made stand-up comedy take off was that television now existed. And so you could go on a TV show and like everyone could see you. They didn't have to go out to a comedy club. That drastically changed the game because she was in their fucking living room. So then when they saw her name on a marquee, I know who that is. She was on the Jack Parr show. There are only 3 channels to watch. So everyone's going to see it because there's only 3 channels. So it's like it's like a night and day difference where it's like now she can headline because when her name's on the marquee, it means something to people because she was just in their living room.
I come from a generation where I've always kind of been aware of stand-up. It's been something that I could kind of see on TV. But at the time, back then, there weren't stand-up specials. Nobody was getting a Netflix special yet because Netflix was dragging their ass, apparently. Fucking losers. But you didn't have traditional stand-up. If you weren't going out to it, you weren't seeing it. I would imagine some people didn't even know that was like
A thing.
And so late night TV shows created a nationally recognized slot for stand-up. It created it. It built it into its structure to elevate those people, because I have to imagine most of these late night hosts came from a background of comedy themselves. I have no idea.
I think a lot of people in early TV were people that had come out of radio, right?
Okay.
So it's like they had that hosting thing and they had radio plays, and radio plays could be funny. And you could do stand up through an audio format, like you could do that. But like TV just like changed, like just like it just changed the game, because once you could see people, you know, it's like it just everything changed, right? After this performance, she can fill a room anywhere, and she describes her ascent in her book, like how she became so successful. And she says, there had been women stand-up comics before me, brassy chicks like Belle Barth and Rusty Warren, who turned the air blue with their crude jokes and after-hours hangouts, as well as the far more sophisticated and attractive Jean Carroll, who specialized in witty one-liners about her husband and her home life.
She continues, Carroll actually made several appearances on The Ed Sullivan Show, yet neither she nor any of the other women broke through on the scale that I did during the late 50s and early 60s. Jean didn't travel to build a mass audience, and Barth and Warren were far too X-rated for television. So for the first 10 years, I had it all to myself. And I love that for her.
Yeah. And then she goes on to say, then again, there weren't even many male singles. Most of them were working in pairs. Martin and Lewis, Allen and Rossi, Burns and Carlin. Stand-ups weren't all that popular at the time. Those like Benny and Hope, that's Jack Benny and Bob Hope, had moved on to other things. It was a wide open field. I sort of snuck in and no one realized what I was doing. My material resonated with housewives everywhere. And that is the shit. Like it's an unprecedented, like she's doing like the lightning round. She's doing all of this in like 2-3 years. I struggle to think of any other comedian that has come on that quickly, burned that brightly, and then stayed and proven themselves to be really fucking good.
And I really like that she is, by her own words, sneaking in and bringing in the perspective of the American housewife, who was really only considered when it came to commercials and selling like soap.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why we have soap operas, literally to sell like laundry soap and dish soap to women. Like, she came in and she was like, actually, you bitches understand what I'm saying.
Here's the thing is like there's genres of comedian, right? And when you're a female comedian, there are fucking lanes. There's the dirty girl lane. Are you a dirty girl? It means is your material about you fucking, right? And then the rest is like, oh, are you like a feminist comic? Which is like you're aggressive and men. So that would be like Elaine Boozler and people like that. Or you like the sassy mom, like Brett Butler, or, you know, and then, or are you like quirky and weird, Maria Bamford? You're sort of siloed into like these genres as like a female comic. If a male comic talks about his sex life, no one calls him a dirty guy.
Boy.
Dirty boy. Yeah.
Ew.
Like, you know what I mean? Like men don't necessarily have the same sort of trappings put on them. But as a woman, like you absolutely, you have to fit into a lane.
It reminds me of an ongoing problem I have societally with the way that we treat women and understand women is incredibly dichotomized. You're the virgin or the whore, barely legal or MILF. You can be one of two extremes. There's never gray area for us to occupy. So in this space, I'm coming from there and I'm like, well, you know what? At least you could be 3 or 4 different things this time. But still, like women were uniquely pressured to
no, but
fit
think
into
about it.
this.
Because if you were like a sassy mom, then you can't tell sex jokes because that's gross.
Right.
Moms don't.
Right.
So let's talk about her act. So she was self-deprecating. She made fun of being skinny and flat-chested and ugly. She had created the character of Fang, a hapless husband, a fat mother-in-law, a skinny sister-in-law. She also invented a slutty sister. She claimed to be, a terrible cook, a terrible housekeeper. And so here are some clips of her doing her act.
I don't like her. She hates me. One day I had a nosebleed. She put a tourniquet on my neck. I didn't give her anything at all last Christmas because she didn't use what I gave her the year before that. A cemetery lot.
That was her talking about her mother-in-law.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, she's definitely like a joke writer, a one-liner kind of. So Phyllis is traveling the country, commanding large fees, up to $3,000 for a stint in 1959, which would be about $30,000 today. That's an incredible feat for a 40-year-old housewife with 5 kids and a husband that made her home life a suffocating black pit emotionally. But what a difference 3 years made.
That's incredible. That is, like, my brain is still not, like, up to $30,000 per appearance?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
But like a stint.
Good for her.
So it'd be like a residency, yeah.
Good for her. Things were starting to soar for her. After failing a screen test at Paramount, she ended up landing a role in Splendor in the Grass, opposite Warren Beatty and Natalie Wood in 1960. The next year, she was cast as Lottie Lacey in a theater production of The Dark at the Top of the Stairs. Then, that November, she made her first appearance on The Ed Sullivan Show.
So imagine how crazy this is. 40-year-old housewife with 5 kids. 3 years ago, she was like riding the trolley into the city to work writing ad copy for a department store. And now she is opposite Warren Beatty and Natalie Wood.
That's huge.
It is fucking nuts. And she can everything she attributes to this book, The Magic of Believing. But she said that she took it as like a system. And like the way she describes it is that she wrote comedy every day, but like that she worked at reframing her literal like state of mind, and that it took a couple years, but that it got her to this place of confidence where like that gave her like the courage to kind of pursue these things. And I can see why she made the book so popular, because I think anyone looking at like her life is like, but she is very quick to say like, I worked at like a program. Like it was about reprogramming my brain to not be insecure and to be optimistic and to focus on joy and happiness and to have faith in myself and my ability to make things happen. Like, but incredible.
Yeah. Mindfulness and just guided thinking goes a long way.
Now, while her star was on the rise, her daughter, Sally, that was the one that was having issues, now 17, was spiraling out of control. So Phyllis took her on the road with her as a last-ditch effort to help. They didn't know how profound Sally's issues were going to be. Her daughter was erratic and challenging.
She wanted a nose job, so Phyllis got her one. And then her daughter wanted her jaw fixed. And Phyllis saw that she was starting a process that she didn't want to continue. Have to imagine she probably recognized some of herself in that.
Yeah. That's like probably my only criticism of the memoir is like the only place that she doesn't really plumb into any depth is her own issues with her appearance. Like she's very much like taking it on the chin, like I wasn't good looking. But like she doesn't really ever really ruminate on like how that impacted, how she viewed herself.
Well, I mean, her whole shtick about leaning into and, sort of doubling down on her perception of herself as unattractive was probably a little bit of a defense mechanism. Like, I'm going to call myself ugly before you get a chance to, and I'm going to do it better than you ever could. Like, I'm actually going to be funny about it, and you're just going to be kind of boring and dull and mean. Yeah. And I imagine that was probably a really hard thing for her to kind of overcome. But I've noticed that in some of the clips that we've watched, she talks about her old face.
Yeah.
And I'm curious how much work she got done
we're gonna
at various
get into
points.
We're going to get into it. Yeah.
I don't bring that up
She was
as
famous
a point
for that.
of criticism or anything. Like, women getting anything any procedures done is their
She was like the
business.
first. She was the first celebrity to openly discuss that she had had surgery.
I have a lot of respect for that.
Yeah. Yeah. She was way ahead of the curve on that one. So while all this was going on, they moved to better digs in New York City, and Phyllis played Carnegie Hall. This is happening in the span of like 3 or 4 years.
Practice is apparently how you get there, and she
Yeah.
did that. Oh
Yep.
my God, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, her husband was agoraphobic and manic. He would keep her up and try to keep her from leaving with long manic tirades. The press would come and he would refuse to leave his room to come out and greet them. He made everything hell. Holy fuck, I've been married to that man.
I knew that this was going to resonate with you. Like,
Yeah.
but that like sleep deprivation is real. When like someone just like won't let you sleep or turn off or walk away. Like when they're just on you. And like that was this guy. Like the more successful she was getting, the happier he should have been. And it was actually making him increasingly just demanding and neurotic. She got together her money and she bought a house in St. Louis where most of her children had been staying with family during this like rise to fame. She felt like she was fulfilling a promise she'd made to them that one day they'd each have their own room.
Aw, that's, wow.
Yeah, it's like a mom.
Yeah, just give them their own room. In any case, she couldn't enjoy it. Both her husband and her daughter were mentally ill and flying off the rails at the time. It culminated in Phyllis walking in on her daughter Sally attempting suicide. And she had to be institutionalized, which would last a lifetime. She was schizophrenic.
You know, it can be a devastating diagnosis. It can also be one you can live with, but like it can also be devastating.
There's a lot going on there. I have very intimate firsthand experience with this. My undergraduate degree is in forensic psychology, but I hope like my entire push to study psychology was learning about schizophrenia. And even with all of that, it does not prepare you. You can know all of the information. And it's a really, really hard thing for both the person experiencing it and the people who are trying to do their goddamnedest by them.
In 1962, she was in the musical Wonderful Town opposite Ward Donovan Tatum, an English actor with a big fan base in the theater. They immediately began an affair despite both being married. From her memoir.
And this is a quote from our girl, Ms. Diller. Well, let me tell you. As soon as I set eyes on him during the first rehearsal of Wonderful Town, the effect was instant, and within a couple of days, the two of us were in the sack. How Phyllis of her.
Yes.
He was tall and handsome with blue eyes and very good at sex. Oh, honey, when you've been abused for over 20 years, that really means something. The physical attraction was really, really strong, and I was nuts about him, like I'd never been nuts about anyone before.
I mean, can we just talk about like the first fuck after you leave an abusive relationship?
Oof.
It's like,
It is.
yeah, it's like losing your virginity all over again. It's like, you got to be careful because you're going to like pair bond with whoever fucking like.
Yeah.
Like when you've been in a relationship of like, especially a lot of emotional deprivation where sexual encounters become loaded with all kinds of like weird, like acquiescing and trying to comfort someone, or you're trying to please them to like get them to leave you alone.
Like coddling, consolation.
Yeah. Where it's like it all becomes about like kind of, or like preemptively doing stuff so that they won't get mad at you later kind of thing. Not pliance, but like, anyway, it'll come to me like when it doesn't matter anymore. I love that for me. So all this is going on. June 7th, 1963 was declared Phyllis Diller Day in San Francisco.
Oh my God.
What
Holy
a difference
shit.
a decade had made.
In 1965, Ward's wife passed away, and Phyllis divorced her husband. Fucking finally. Jesus.
Yeah.
Before her separation, Red Skelton had paid her $10,000 to reserve the right to make a sitcom about her. The sitcom would be about her and her mythical husband, Fang. But, when she divorced her real-life husband, the project was shelved, and she was told to keep the money. However, She was secure in her position now as a stand-up and had just bought a multi-million-dollar home and was with a new man she was hella crazy about, and the future still seemed bright. Good for her.
Wow, what a difference. And that's the thing though, is like when you're in an abusive situation, it's like being ready to leave is like such a hard thing. But then it does kind of ultimately come down to like having feelings for someone else and like being treated by someone else like way better and going like, oh my God, I've been in a delusion for X amount of years. So she had become friends with Hugh Hefner at the start of her career. And in the late 60s, he asked her if she wanted to pose nude for the magazine. And she said, sure.
Sure.
She didn't have shame around her. Yeah. She didn't have shame around her body or nudity. They had just done a spread with Mama Cass, who was fat, and the inclusion of Phyllis in the next magazine was meant to be another counterpoint, an ugly, super skinny woman being in the magazine. It was meant to be played for laughs. So it's important to understand that. Like this was meant to be like a tongue-in-cheek kind of thing. So,
yeah, you love the photographs of beautiful, nubile young ingenues. Well, let us delve into something you'll never be able to bleach from your mind. These
others. It's important to understand the context of her being asked was like people will think this is so funny. Because
and
this
the
was
point
the 60s
wasn't,
and it was not about body positivity or anything else. It was the 60s. It was about
this was not her feeling led to believe that she is actually some sexy young ingenue against all greater sense.
Yeah.
It was, she was participating in a joke together with Hef.
Yes. Yes.
However, when Phyllis showed up and took off her clothes and went through hair and makeup, the resulting photos were too sexy. She had a supermodel thin, tall body and huge tits, 40 triple D, which I say that for the women because men don't understand bra sizes and they don't know what that means. But they do understand
jugs.
her titties
Those
were
are jugs.
big. Yeah.
Those were jugs.
Jugs as jugs.
Like
Mommy
I have tits.
She had jugs.
She had jugs.
Yeah. I have boobies. I don't have tits.
Yeah, you have boobies. I have tits, and then
she got some jugs. It's like Playboy said, "We would like this, please," and she was like, "Ha ha, that idiots." And then she was like, "But actually, yes, here you go. But don't be a dick about it." And they were like, "Well, you're too fucking hot. Turns out you're too hot for TV, too hot for Playboy."
Yeah, she's the only model that's ever been turned down because she was too hot.
Yeah, so, she was big tittied, small waisted, beautifully made up, coiffed.
Long legs, beautiful. Yeah.
For days, and it would have completely ruined her career for the wrong reasons. If anything, being beautiful would have been a hindrance for her.
Yes,
and
her whole image. Yeah, her whole image was, and especially because she would constantly make jokes about how flat-chested she was. And she deliberately wore big waistless dresses that were short to show off her super skinny legs and to hide the fact that she actually had huge tits.
Yeah. She also is she wearing a wig in these videos that we've been watching? Because it looks like she looks like weird Barbie. Mm-hmm. You know, she looks like Cynthia from the Rugrats.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's called a fright wig, and that's intentional. Because of the kind of jokes she made about being flat-chested and ugly, the picture that came from the shoot revealed her deception. So they tried to reschedule the shoot and do it again, but the lights kept blowing out, and she took it as a sign that it wasn't meant to be. But we still have the photo. If you do a Google search, you can find it. This was back before Playboy even showed pubic hair. It's very safe for work, but she is a smoke show.
Would you ever pose in the nude?
I did.
For what?
Playboy, what else?
You posed in the...
I go way back. There weren't any other magazines.
I must have missed that issue.
There were other girls. Oh,
did you pose?
Of course.
Phyllis.
Oh, in the bushes, bear on a rug.
Oh, wow. Is this the photo in the script? This is...
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Straight up, her hair looks like trash. She does still look like a Barbie that got played with too hard in the hair. However, goddamn, ma'am, I get it. She looks like the woman I worked with at Waffle House who knew that somebody was about to be stabbed before even the person who was going to stab them did.
Yeah.
And like, she's got that insight. But yeah, she's hot. She's incredibly sexy. And we've
She's
got
very
a
sexy.
TikTok.
She's very sexy, and like we're not going to see the roast that it happened at, but like Robert Mitchum, like she goes to hug her and like lifts her off the ground, and it's just so obvious they fucked. And like that's the thing is like she did a lot of fucking. Like
Good
she
for
glossed
her.
over it in her memoir, but she cheated on her husband a lot. Before
It sounds like there was
she
a
met the
lot
guy
of
she left him
infidelity.
for. Yeah, like she fucked around a lot. But she was like, well, you know, they were like one night stand. Like she just throws it in like an aside, like, well, you know, I mean, they're like one night stands at gigs and stuff. But I mean, that's not the same thing as like an affair.
I'm going to not judge her through the lens of my current experience, but I'm just gonna say like, just don't cheat on your partner. Just leave them. Okay. So she's losing her hair because she has dyed the absolute incredible fuck out of it. She went to a clinic that gave her a special rubber brush that she was supposed to use every day. She was supposed to turn her head upside down and brush her scalp vigorously to stimulate hair growth. That sounds like bullshit.
Yeah.
That sounds like not a thing that is actually going to do that. But I bet at the time they thought it was real.
Yeah. So instead of it stimulating hair growth, it pulled out more of her own hair and napped what hair she did have, which created like an electrocuted look. But she liked it. So she started buying wigs and teasing them out all crazy to match the rest of her like over the top onstage persona. And she explained her reasoning as such.
She said, "More than ever, women who saw me perform could now feel beautiful by comparison, while their guys must have suddenly felt like they were living with Aphrodite."
This is a very real thing. I was opening for a comic. I will not say who, but I came to the gig in a midriff and he was like, it's not a very good comedy outfit. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, it's a little sexy. And I was like, and he was like, well, that's going to make the women feel insecure and the men aren't going to want to laugh at you. You're shooting yourself in the foot. I'm not trying to tell you what to wear. I'm just telling you what the audience is going to do when they see you in that outfit. And bitch, if I didn't button up that fucking flannel and walk out there like a fucking in like a hijab situation, because I was like, wait, people aren't going to laugh? I will come out in a paper bag with 2 eye holes. I will be like, I'm the Zodiac, bitch. Get to dancing. Dance, motherfuckers. Like, yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I mean, that's a real thing. That is a very real thing. And he was right. And I took the note. There's just like a weird thing that happens socially that is specific to like women. But like even Matt Rife had to deal with this, where it's like if you're an attractive dude, it's also people just are, it's like harder for them to like laugh with you or laugh at you. Because like, what do you have to complain about? You're hot.
Fair.
She had said earlier in that clip that we played earlier, like the court jester always had to be ugly. Because like there has to be, you know, there has to be some level of like taking it down, because people, their ability to laugh and their desire to fuck, those are 2 different
And
channels in the brain.
I continue to challenge that by being, once again, a lay down
comedian.
But for me, it's like easy. Like, be a good audience or don't fuck me.
I hate to sound like a Pick Misha or a Barbara the Builder. Pick Misha and Barbara the Builder, the 2 worst
Fuck
defenders
me
of
in the
fucking
tits. I love you.
But like, I've noticed, like, you know, some women, if they see an attractive woman on stage, it just makes them immediately feel like insecure in their own head, you know? And I don't think it's their fault. Like, I think we're just conditioned socially to feel threatened by other attractive women. Like, we just are kind of like really and unless you've been in a job like you and I have, where you're just constantly surrounded by it. Because when I first got into porn, I was like that. I was like, this makes me feel insecure. And then it's like, there's just so much beauty that like you have to get over it.
Yeah.
And then like you get over it and you realize like, no, like we all bring something unique to the table, blah, 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 blah. Like it's fine. But like, I forget that like I've had that experience, which has really it just washes it out of you, you know, like it's just very hard for me to look at a woman and feel jealous or insecure now in my life. But when I was younger and before I was in sex work and all this kind of stuff, absolutely, I would feel threatened by like someone I perceived as attractive because I thought we were all competing for the same resources.
Absolutely.
And so there is a part of that lingers. And I think that, I mean, I still find, I do it sometimes. If there's a comic that comes on and I sense that she's attractive, I'll admit it. Like sometimes there'll be a twinge of like, you know, and it's like, and then I recognize it's happening. And I'm like, don't do the patriarchy's work for them. Like, just like calm your tits, you know? And like, and just recognize that like she's a beautiful woman and very talented and she's in the space and she's doing her thing and just clap, you know? But like, even I do it and I'm a comedian. I know exactly what the mechanics of it are, and it still is like, doesn't prevent it from happening, you know?
Look, I think that's a really powerful point to make. Bigger than comedy, bigger than anything, that it doesn't matter how self-actualized you are, how much you have learned and endeavor to be a better participant in the social endeavor of humanity. It doesn't matter how much you want to be a cool girl or a good partner or good, like at the end of the day, sometimes we're still prone to feeling certain kinds of ways. And the sooner that you can assume and understand and get on the same page with your audience who's doing that and they don't have the self-reflection that you do, they don't have the schemas to review those things the way that you do because you're a performer or an entertainer or whatever, the quicker you're going to expand your audience and relate to people who are just waiting for you to appeal to them. If only you would learn how to meet them.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's the thing is like everyone has to figure out their own act. And like one of the things that like was a hurdle for me to get over is like I'm in porn, which is something that already inherently makes a lot of women feel really insecure.
Yes.
So I was like, how do I get through this? And so I kind of have created this persona that's like, yeah, like, you know, I dated an NBA player. It was awesome because I hate condoms.
And his nut might cost him $1 million, but it might be the one that makes me a millionaire.
And so I love
your comedy, Sovereign. I love your fucking
but like
comedy.
I've created this persona where I go like, all right, here's what you think my life is probably like, and you're right. I movie stars and professional athletes. You are correct. So instead of running away from that or trying to hide from that, I'm gonna make it funny for you. Like, yeah, I do these people, and here's what I'm thinking is like, what's in it for me? Like, how can I get some money? Like, I'm trying to get paid too. Like, meh, I would like to not work. Is that I found a way to say, live vicariously through me. So, like, you're imagining my life a certain type of way, and in a lot of ways, you are correct. So let's make fun of it. Let's make fun of that shallow, gold digging, fame seeking, clout chasing, doesn't have to do any work and men are just like whatever and she sucks for money. Like, how do I take that persona and instead of trying to hide from it, because if you can Google me and count the wrinkles on my asshole, there's no way I'm going to be able to like hide from that reality. So I found a way to like lean into it and kind of create this character that's very much like me. Isn't me, but is very much like me. You know, like and that, but that I can riff on in certain ways, you know, like sometimes it's an NBA player, sometimes it's an NFL player. I've dated both. And they both didn't use condoms because they were just reckless and dumb. So the joke
both fit the bit.
Yes.
Look, these are people who were very popular in high school for exposing themselves weekly to traumatic brain injury.
Yeah.
So yeah, they've got some different ways of thinking about things.
My whole shtick is like, yeah, I have lived this kind of crazy life where I've been exposed to these experiences that are whatever. And I'm going to come back and tell you about like how silly these people are, you know, and how superficial it all is and how like, it's not really that deep, you know, and it's not that fun. And it's actually not that glamorous. It's like at the end of the day, all of these people, including myself, are incredibly narcissistic and self-centered and solipsistic and honestly, like unhappy, you know, and like, let's make a joke out of it.
I know, and I can't get enough of it. I'm fucking like addicted to your shit, Sovereign. Back to Ms. Diller.
Yes.
In 1963, she had a 90-minute special called Phyllis Diller. It was on ABC. It aired on Thanksgiving night, 5 days after JFK was assassinated. Damn. No fucking pressure or anything. It was here that her problems with Ward made their first appearance.
So she had written Ward into her show to croon some numbers at the opening, but at rehearsals, he was like trying to direct the show because he was an important theater actor. The director, who had won a Peabody, nearly walked. Phyllis says that this should have been a huge warning to her of how things would go, but she was too in love to see that she'd gone from one ineffective man to another.
Because if you've only been with ineffective men, then your perception of man is, I guess he's going to be ineffective some way. Like, I guess my struggle is that all men are inherently incompetent and performative of that. Additionally, like, they're trying to be the star of the show by how useless they are, and they're killing it.
Yeah.
Game recognized game. No. Anyway, in 1964, she was hosting her own variety show called Show Street. It was shot in a theater and featured up-and-coming artists and performers. It was a late night slot, like the first Conan O'Brien show. So they could get away with more far out and experimental bits. Now, Sovereign, I know you're going to tell me what the fuck it means to be like the first Conan O'Brien show, because I don't know, and I just said those words out loud.
Well, if you remember back in the 90s and I think early 2000s, like there's like David Letterman or Jay Leno, or there's like your late night. And then there's like the show that's like late. Which, so like the late show comes on, I think like news is over at 11, and it's like 11 to midnight is like the late night show. And then at like, or no, I think it's like, 10 to 11 would be the late night show. And then like 11 to 11:30 or 11 to 12 would be the late show. And that's where like the alternative comedy stuff, like Comic the Insult Pup, all the weird bits that Conan O'Brien was doing, that he was able to do that because it was late.
Okay.
So it's like, it was considered like you could just get away with a little bit more offbeat, experimental kind of stuff. Whereas
that makes
like,
sense. There's less oversight from like, there's less audience oversight.
Yes.
If nothing else.
Yes. So it's like you'd have David Letterman and Jay Leno, and then Conan O'Brien was the late guy. And like, he wasn't as well known, but like he was the water cooler guy. Cause like they would make experiments. They would do experiments with each other. Whereas late shows have to be very formulaic and very like to the period and the T and the exclamation point, right? And late had just a lot more freedom to be wacky and try new stuff. She gave Joan Rivers her first writing job for TV. Writing jokes for this show called Show Street. It was a great show, but she was in high demand at clubs and only had one night off a week, which was spent rehearsing for Show Street. So when it came time to be renewed, she asked for double her salary so she could give up some of her club bookings. The network didn't go for it, so she left. And here is Joan Rivers talking about Phyllis.
She represented the first woman stand-up that just stood up, didn't sing, didn't dance, just went out and competed with the men on their turf and did it brilliantly. And it was a great gag writer. She cared about each word. She was very precise. I was crazy about her. And lovely in private. Very kind to the people coming up.
I love that the interviewer was like, kind? Phyllis Diller was kind? And like, of course she was. She was a mother coming up in a space where other women kind of didn't have much of a shot, and invite other women to the space, and thus crafting something good for everyone who's a woman in comedy. And a lot of I have so much respect for this woman.
Yeah.
Like in so many ways.
I knew you were going to like fall in love with her. I was just like, I was so excited to do this episode.
Not that anyone is sitting around resting on their laurels, waiting for Ela Darling to be like, you know what, Phyllis Diller? Yeah, I think she's cool. But like, what a fucking bitch and badass.
Yeah, totally.
She was setting box office records at the clubs in spite of everything, and she was enjoying herself. She would buy jokes from people for $5, and she gave many Hollywood writers their first writing jobs, something that she was incredibly proud to do. And she should have been. She was always someone that wanted to give back to the community and be a help to people. And that is how she was remembered by others after she passed away. Which, oh man, that isn't.
I mean, you kind of knew it was coming, but
I want everyone to think of me fondly.
Yeah.
Or think of me as like the best schemer. And like, you know what, I can't even fault her. Like, I don't know where all of my savings went, and I don't know how this child got here, and the turtle up there means nothing to me, but somehow this bitch did something. I don't know. Like, what an incredible woman.
Yeah. I want to be remembered for being powerful. No, I want to be remembered for being a hard worker and for being kind. That's how I'd like to be remembered. And I would like to die by misadventure. So preferably hiking or something. I figure around like 60, 65, fall off a cliff.
I want to be remembered for kindness and advocacy. And like, I want to be remembered as someone who did my goddamnedest as much as I can to advocate for people in similar situations to me or in other situations. But I want to die by my own hand. And I know that that's a controversial thing to say, but I'm a control freak.
Yeah, no, I get that. So she would also sometimes buy jokes from regular people that wrote into her. One of those people was a housewife from Wisconsin named Mary McBride. She went on to hire Mary to ghostwrite 3 of her comedy books through Doubleday, which went on to be bestsellers, changing McBride's life most certainly. While she employed thousands of joke writers over the years, about 75% of her material she wrote herself because only she could. Her style was uniquely hers. Of her praxis, she said,
still, I wrote at least 75% of all the material myself, and people often told me they loved to hear me say what they would have loved to say about the woman next door, the husband, the mother-in-law, whoever. In fact, my acerbic one-liners also reflected what I might think about people but never dared to say to their faces because I didn't want to hurt them and I didn't want to fight. My favorite joke has always been the triple whammy, where one line builds on another, each revealing something new about the idiots around me, even though I'm clearly just as stupid. This is not easy to create. And that is really true. Like self-deprecation while you're pointing that ray at everyone else.
Yeah.
That's a tough line to walk.
Well, I think it's like what we were talking about earlier is like when you can be telling jokes, the same joke is hitting 2 different audiences completely differently. And that whole housewife thing, right? Is like the ability to tell a joke that like the women are getting and appreciating in one way and men are getting the same joke, but they're not laughing for the same reason.
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
and
someone's really getting the joke and someone's finding a reason to laugh.
Yeah.
And those are not the same thing.
Yeah. So let's listen to her talking about her practice.
Like my own material, I frequently have what they call topper, 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 bang. In other words, you set a joke up, and then you have 3 words, 1 word, 2 words, that each get a laugh. And then when they think they've had the whole shot, you lay a really heavy ending on them. Mm-hmm. That's the greatest joy in the world.
That is really good. But my takeaway from that is like,
look how pretty she is.
Well, she's pretty, but no, it's her voice. Her voice is like syrup. Her voice is so like, she has the voice of a generation of a, like she's got a voice for radio and a face for Playboy if they weren't such cowards.
Yeah. Let's look at this next clip.
Let's do the second one.
I don't like long jokes. I'm a one-liner queen. I don't have patience for long things because I know where it's going. So why do I have to take that walk?
We've had so many people on this joke say that the joke doesn't matter, it's just the long walk.
Oh, they like the walk.
Sure.
Oh.
So we like this other point of view.
You got enough of me. That's another thing. I don't like long shows. I don't like a long anything.
Not anything?
Nothing long. Not even a marriage.
Okay, so as that conversation is happening, she's getting up, and it looks like she's like, yeah, I don't like anything long. And it looks like she's like, oh, look at my wrist.
Yeah.
I don't, hey, listen to me. Listen to what I'm saying. I don't like shit that runs too long.
Yeah. Now, anyway, I'm getting the fuck out of here. So around this time, she also became very close friends with Bob Hope. He had gone out of his way to see her before, but it was a few years later before they became real friends. And when they did, they hit it off so well that Hope's wife once warned her to, like, mind her manners.
Ooh.
Phyllis said that they never had a sexual relationship, but they got along like a house on fire. He went on to put her in several of his TV shows and put her in 3 of his movies, as well as taking her with him on several USO tours. This was not nothing. So this is her talking about the collaboration with him.
In the movies with him, he was always sneering at me, and he always placed me in servile roles.
Welcome, pretty lady. Welcome, pretty lady.
Hi there, fellas. What kind of a welcome is that? You guys really need nurses.
Where are those snipers when you need them?
The private Navy as Sergeant O'Farrell, I was a nurse. Always an ugly person.
Remember, I'm a nurse. I've got the cure for what ails you.
Nobody's that sick.
She is so clearly putting on airs about how ugly she is. She's like got her hair teased out in the worst way, and her makeup is not flattering. It's like, I get it, girl. You're too hot, and you're toning it down for us.
I mean, we're going to get into it as we go on with the episode, because this is like really why I think she's such an important figure.
I love her.
Yeah. So soon after ABC approached her about doing a comedy vehicle for them, they were hoping to attract a female audience in the way that Lucille Ball had with I Love Lucy. The show was called The Pruitts of Southampton, a show about a wealthy family that had lost all its money but still tried to put on airs as though they were wealthy. Pretty much like what had happened with Phyllis's first husband's family.
How to do, my dear. What a lovely surprise. Nice to see you here.
All the bills have been long overdue, my dear.
File them under IOU. How to do, well, hello, it's you. Love my dress, love my jewels, are they Marley-Boo? They belong to the Internal Revenue, and they've got us eating stew.
The Pruitts of Southampton live like the richest folk. But what the folk don't know is that the Pruitts are flat broke.
How to do, my dear.
We are out of champagne and I'm stuck, my dear.
Ask the butler to lend you a buck, my dear. How to do.
The Pruitts of Southampton in color, where each letter of in color is a different color, but there's really 4 colors. It's blue, red, beige, and green. And they didn't think to throw in like a yellow, a purple. It's like, it's in color, but not very good, and we know it. I am in love with this. Can I watch this show?
Yeah, I'm
Where
sure.
do I find the show?
I think there's a couple channels that kind of do like old classic TV. So the show only lasted a year because of low ratings and because Phyllis had walked. She was green and the shooting schedule was grueling. They shot everything like a movie with 3 cameras doing several takes with different shots for every scene. She was often paired with directors that didn't get her comedic style, and she wasn't a writer on her own show. These were all things she should have been advocating for, but she didn't know. Like, she didn't know showbiz. So she didn't know that she should be demanding that she be like the head writer, and that she should be demanding that she chooses the directors. You know what I mean? Like, there's just stuff she didn't know. And as someone that sold a TV show and then like didn't know like when I was supposed to take the lead, like it's scary. You know, it's a completely different world.
Yeah.
I also think that with all the comedy bookings and tours, being in charge of yet another thing was probably exhausting. So I think there was also a part of her that was just kind of like, she was saying yes to everything, and then she would get in it and be like, oh, this is fucking overwhelming.
One story she tells, she's supposed to be under a Rolls Royce, changing her own oil in a mink coat. However, when Phyllis got ready to do the scene, the car was mounted on apple boxes. Apple boxes. If you don't know what apple boxes is, that's not something you put a fucking car on.
Yeah, it's a plywood crate.
Yeah, it's
not
literally
it's not designed.
boxes.
It's not like weight bearing. That's not what it's designed for.
Literally, what they were doing was dangerous, and
Yeah.
it could have, and almost certainly at some point has, resulted in death or serious injury.
Yeah.
So she was not the fuck about that. Good for her. The director put her under the car, and the car was literally touching her. She came out from the car and told him that the car's too close for comfort. And he told her to drink some vodka and get back under the car.
It's like, what was it? What is this, a porn set? Anyway.
Yes, seriously. Come on, man.
So she refused and went back to her dressing room, and a few minutes later, the car collapsed onto the floor. She would have been crushed to death if she had done as the director said. That wasn't what made her walk, though, because she's a performer.
She's a professional. It was around this time that there started to be trouble in her marriage to Ward. She had always had a gut feeling that he was gay or bisexual. Love a fluid king.
I know, me too.
But she'd never seen it with her own eyes. And at the time, men's bisexuality was absolutely so far behind what it deserved to be. But that's neither here nor there.
Well, I mean, Marlon Brando was fucking with hats off like anything that would move, and everybody knew it. So, strangely at this time, being queer in Hollywood was kind of like, you didn't talk about it, but it was very kind of accepted.
She continues, and I foolishly thought our marriage would straighten him out. A lot of women think like that, while others like being married to gay men. In fact, whenever music is mixed with gay, there's a good chance I'll be hooked. Yet, I hated it when that side of Ward became impossible to ignore.
And that is where we'll end part 2 for our series on Phyllis Diller. Next week, we will be doing the finale, and we will kind of watch her become an icon, and then we will discuss her legacy, which is still felt very much today. And we're going to get into the plastic surgery and the other stuff, for sure. Because I wanted that to be its own little segment, because it's its own segment.
Yes. Also, when I ask about her plastic surgery, I'm not trying to I'm not trying to catch her. I'm not trying to
No. She'll tell you. She lines out exactly how many procedures she had, exactly what she had done, when she had it done, why she had it done, whether or not she would do it again. She
so
was
much respect.
She was an open book.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
We did it.
I aspire to be that.
Yeah. So show notes will be in show notes are all the sources are in the show notes, and then also all of our links to buy merch, links to support the Patreon, links to Ella's personal socials, my personal socials, her OnlyFans, my Substack,
the place where you can buy a facsimile of my vulva. Please, please, please use my affiliate link.
Yeah,
because I don't get paid for my pussy otherwise, and it's my pussy, and you're gonna love it. I promise.
Yeah, make sure to send me the affiliate link so I can put it in the show notes so that
absolutely
people can have that. This was recorded for me locally here in Highland Park on traditional Chumash and Tongva land. Stewards of the land and caretakers, and a continued vibrant cultural force in Southern California.
And I have been recording from Austin, Texas, which is the historical land of the Tonkawa, Lipan Apache, and Comanche peoples. And we are grateful to the stewards of this land, who are still vibrant cultures amongst us to this day. They're still around. They're still asking you to fucking give a shit.
Oh, hey, and congratulations to the Navajo peoples out in Arizona. Joe Biden just signed It's like a deal where basically there'll be no more in certain designated areas around the national park of Grand Canyon. There will be no more uranium mining, no more any of that stuff. So it's kind of like the first step in a process of land back.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So
That's
that's
awesome.
like a win's a win. And I think the Secretary of the Interior, Deb Haaland, is the Native woman that is, I forget what her exact cabinet position is, but she was one of the people that was helped bring through that legislation. And then I think it was the Democratic person out of Arizona spent 8 years trying to get this bill passed, and it finally got signed into legislation, I think a couple days ago. I just saw it on TikTok. So also congratulations.